I wanted to it was going to give me an opportunity to kind of share the story, which has been shared for many years. And there's been many articles written, but I've noticed it's changed. And I always have people coming in telling me that's not exactly how it turned out, or that's not how it was. I have the old timers always coming in telling me their real story. But I was able to kind of dig through a lot of the old stuff. And I did find a writing that was done in 1968, and I think it best encapsulates my dad, who was, the mentality at the time, where the country was in the whole bit. And after that, I want to expand on my mom, because without my mom, my dad got a lot of credit with Round Table Pizza. Without my mother, there would be no Round Table Pizza. I want to make that clear. But she was always in the background in the whole bit. So I like to just start off by reading something that somebody wrote. Like most of the stuff that has always been contributed to Round Table, like the artists, if you come into the original store, you'll see the original metal thing on the wall next to the redwood plaque. So all these people designed that stuff and brought it in. I have no idea who it was. These people just, out of the love of the product and Round Table and the whole bit, made this stuff and brought it in. You see these mosaics. My dad had every one of those bolted to a wall in every single one of the stores. Somebody made those individually. They're brass inlaid, the whole bit. They don't make those anymore. So it was the little things that he did. The redwood was important to him. The fact that, he grew up in the mountains in La Honda. We still have 12 acres by Portola Redwood State Park. My grandfather worked for PBM. He worked for the water company in Palo Alto. So doing work up there, he was given a chance of either money or an acre of land, and he chose an acre of land. And we still have the 12 acres up there in our log cabin. So my dad grew up there, but he incorporated that into the business. Well, having all redwood round, square tables, and then the big redwood round table, and then all the plaques in the stores, if you remember, were redwood rounds, and they had the gold leaf writing. You can't get that anymore. So all that stuff he incorporated. So I'd like to start off with this little reading. I don't know who did this, but it's somebody who obviously knew my dad. So it's William Ray Larson. In the heart of California, Santa Clara County, in the last years of the Great Depression, a restless spirit came into the world. Bill Larson. Reared in a humble home by frugal Scandinavian parents, young Bill early learned the value of the dollar and the amount of sweat required to win it. Never noted for his studiousness, it's true, the restless spirit manifested itself at an early age, and Bill obtained his parents' reluctant permission to leave Palo Alto High School in his senior year and enter the Navy. The romance of the high seas and foreign lands captured young Bill's fancy, and he eagerly began a 4-year enlistment. The year 1950 found the restless spirit, a fuzzy-cheeked youth of 17, wrestling a heavy supply truck in the battle zone of Korea. The traditional luck of the Larsons held true for Bill, who after 6 months in active duty in Korea found himself transferred to Japan for the remainder of his duty. For a time at least, life moved at a satisfactory pace for the boy from Palo Alto. He was always proud about Japan. He climbed Mount Fuji, had his stick and the whole bit, so it was very nostalgic to him. Returning to California after his discharge, Bill found a world far removed from the colorful excitement of the Orient. The colors were not as brilliant, the sounds were not as exotic, and he sought employment to support himself and his newly acquired wife. I don't know if that's the word nowadays. So the restless spirit again came to the fore in rapid succession. Bill went from service station attendant to assembly line technician and finally to grocery clerk. The itching feet soon carried Bill and his wife and new daughter to the little town of Placerville in the High Sierras. Here he joined Safeway stores and began his career in food handling as a checker. He soon was promised to assistant manager, promoted to assistant manager, and Safeway stores persuaded him to continue his education in retailing. The restless spirit again became known, and Bill, now thoroughly entrenched at the management level with Safeway stores, moved from Stockton to Pittsburgh and finally back home to Palo Alto. During this exodus, another daughter was born. By this time, Bill felt he had gone about as far as he could go with Safeway and joined the Coca-Cola company, hoping to climb still higher. While making his rounds with his company, he came into contact with his first volume pizza operation, Ham Bones. And And that's really a key thing, because that's where my dad learned everything, was from hand bones. In San Mateo, California. The business intrigued him, and he started working for hand bones in the evenings. A whole new industry seemed in its infancy, and to better understand its intricacy, Bill left Coca-Cola Company and joined Mid-California cheese distributors. The pizza industry became of age. Such names as Shakey's and Neonettes became household words. In 1959, the restless spirit could wait no longer to join the rush. With $1,000 in savings and $1,500 loan from his grandparents' furniture in his car, Bill and his wife, Tony, opened a tiny, unimposing little pizza parlor in Menlo Park, which they called the Round Table. This was the beginning. So that's just a little, encapsulation of my dad at the time. But I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about my mom, because I think, we got to consider that about the time, it was after the war, a lot of people coming. So I think the great story of my mom and dad meeting is that it was a melting pot at the time. So my mom was born in China. My great-grandparents were Russian and fled Siberia during Stalin's reign, and my great-grandfather was stationed in China during the war. So my mother was brought up in the Chinese convents. She speaks 7 fluent languages, but from there she then got shipped to the Philippines and lived in a tent for 3 years, had typhoid, malaria. When the Japanese then occupied the Philippines, was lucky to get on a plane, flew to the United States and the whole bit. So I look at this and I'm like, God, here's my mom culture. My grandmother was married to the Consulate General of Sweden. All this stuff and the whole bit. And then met my dad. I mean, this guy that, dropped out of high school when he was 17, got in trouble. He was a rebel rouser, in the early days a little bit. They met at Jordan, went to Mayfield together the whole bit. And to think that those two met is truly amazing. I only speak one language. That's a bummer. But my mom, I just never forget. There were 6 kids in my family. I have 3. There's 9 actually. I have 6 sisters. 1 from my dad's first marriage, and then 6 in my family. We were the Brady Bunch. We were 3 boys, 3 girls. We watched that show every freaking night. That and was the whole bit, because we all identified, because there were 6. When we walked into a restaurant, there was the Larsons. There was the Menu Tree. That was the best place, because we'd go in there and they would just give us money and go wherever you want. We loved that place, the little cuckoo clock and the whole bit. But just a great time growing up in the area and the whole bit, and being part of Round Table. So for those two to meet, and then my mom was always there. 6 kids in the family and the whole bit. I just remember as a teenager always coming home late at night, and I'll never forget, my mom was always folding laundry. And now I know why. I have 3 kids of my own, but I can't imagine 6 kids and adults and all that. And we had a laundry chute, so we just put it down there and it came up folded. It was amazing. So without my mom, she was instrumental in the business and the whole bit. None of it would have been possible, the whole bit. And we didn't travel back then. For us, travel was going to Santa Cruz. Over the hill, you get a beach house. We'd get the frickin' string. My dad would line us up in front of the carousel and he'd say, here, 5 o'clock. And you could go anywhere you want. It was just a great time, at that time. And to be associated with Round Table in the area, I went to Jordan Junior High. I went to, Walter Hayes. Addison, Walter Hayes, Ortega, Jordan, Pally, Gunn. Yeah, we moved a lot. Just being associated with Round Table at the same time, it was just a great period of time. And I'll never forget, as a kid, the only time I thought, and I really thought we made it big time, is when we were going down 101 and they had the billboard that had the share a little pizza with somebody you loved. And I was like, oh my God, we're big time. You'll see the Life, this thing, Life magazine. My dad was really proud. He advertised in Life magazine at the time. He was a guy that collected every Life magazine, everything back then, a whole bit. So yeah, those little intricacies, and he always saved everything. But so I wanted to also expand a little bit about the motif and kind of explain that. The people thought, Round Table opened up and then it was Knights of the Round Table. No. Bill admits that the name came before the motif. For opening that first store in Menlo Park, paying $140 a month of rent for space in the old California Waterworks building. You know, that all came afterwards. You know, he wanted, it was supposed to just be Ye Old Round Table. And if you see this book we have, I've got it in here somewhere. I think I left it in the car. I gotta bring it in here. It's the Bible. And if you see inside this book, you'll see where he put Ye Round Table, Ye Old Round Table, and you can see him sketching it 3 pages. And then finally he goes, Ye Old Round Table Pizza. So I mean, no $500,000 company, no $1 million. It just, to him, he was on the way to work, and he goes, we had all square tables and the big round table, and he called it round table, not thinking about the Knights of the Round Table. That came after. So I was just, that was amazing to me how that it was the perfect you know, adaptation into that a little bit. So yeah, and some of the things I learned just recently, that if you go into the original store, we have the original post. I didn't know that those posts came from San Francisco Hotel. I'd like to know which one. I just like that kind of stuff or whatever, but I don't know where he got that stuff. I recently got my roof inspected in, I don't know if anyone's noticed this, but in 50 years that roof has never been done. Why? I just had a roofer come out and he goes, Bob, I don't know how your dad got these, but these were imported from Italy or whatever, these slate tiles. And he goes, that roof will be there far longer than that round table will ever be there. So it's really all this stuff that he built in there. And then his affection to Solvang, California. We had a franchisee out there, Frank May. I used to always go with my dad, you know, out to Solvang, and we'd always go to all the stores. That was the thing for me. I loved being a kid and going to all the stores. He collected all the jukebox money. Okay, so I didn't understand why we were going to all the round tables, and he'd have bags and bags. I'm like, I don't know why. You know, but we'd all collect the jukebox money, and that's where I got to meet all the individual round table owners a little bit. And so, yeah, a lot of great memories, you know, in the business that time. I know my dad picked up the family, and we we went to the Philippines for like 4 months and 6 months or whatever. And I was like, why did we do that? My dad was like, well, because I left Allenbach Cheese Company at the time. And that's when the mafia was all connected. So he was getting calls that, you know, no, you're going with us or whatever. So even little stuff like that. And he goes, yeah, we took off to the Philippines for 6 months or whatever. And so that's how the business was back then. It was, you know, my personal experience, some of the greatest experiences been through this business. When I was first given an opportunity to work for my dad, I was given a choice of Menlo Park or the Rancho on Alameda de los Pocos. Well, I wasn't dumb. I was just started managing. Alameda was the perfect store, small, you know, not the Menlo Park was the big bear. It was the double the volume, the whole bit. So I chose the Alameda, and I ran that for like 4 years. But what a great experience! The Dutch Goose, meeting all those players. In the 80s, you'd be up there in the late 80s, that back parking lot would be filled, Sharon Heights, all the kids would gather up there, but I would get calls when the Niners were winning the Super Bowls in that first Super Bowl because Carmen and Eddie had those condos up in Sharon Heights, remember that? And I'd get calls late at night from Carmen Policy. He's like, Bob, I need like 4 pizzas. He'd pull up in his big black car. It felt like it was helping the Niners win the Super Bowl. I was like going, yeah, Carmen would call me up, you know. And then one of the greatest things was I was a huge Niner fan. I mean, and to think that I had tickets to go see the Niners at Stanford Stadium, to see my idol, Joe Montana, the whole bit. But then to get a phone call the Monday before the Super Bowl and have a guy order 500 large pizzas for all the kids that did the opening ceremony. So I was on the phone, and I had learned back then you said yes, and then you hung up and figured out later how you're going to do that. So I was like, holy crap, you know, that's like 500. And we had both stores, so we had to close each because where do you stack 250 large pizzas? And this is before delivery, so I called all my friends who had El Caminos, 4x4s, trucks, and I had a keg of beer afterwards at Bull Park by Gunn High School because that's where we dropped off the pizzas, was Gunn High School. And I'll never forget, us all driving in with our 4x4s and our El Caminos and trucks, and oh all those kids running toward us and taking the pizzas, and then I rewarded my buddies with a keg over at Bull Park, whatever. But afterwards, the Niners win the Super Bowl, and just our crew, who was all about the Niners, but everyone working, because it was really like a family back then. You really had the fabric of the community. When we were there Friday and Saturday nights, all the parents came. The kids were behind the counter, and the parents would come in and eat dinner. It was just a cool thing, at the time. So, the Super Bowl thing, and then being at that round table, like everyone else in 1989, going home. I just got off shift. I'm gonna watch A's, Giants, World Series. I'm living in Palo Alto on Santa Margarita Drive, right by the Sizzler there, Old Palo Alto. That's where my first house was, Trinity brand. Yeah, you could buy a house for that. But I lived down there, and I just sit down to drink my beer, and the earthquake happened. My whole freaking house that was built in 1940, I thought it was all gonna collapse. I rolled out my door, and then I immediately called the round table. Should have called my family first, but I called the store because I was afraid about the gas and all that, Called my manager, and I'm like, well, you gotta shut everything down. And he's like, well, we have power and everything. I go, you do? And he goes, yeah, we have everything. And I go, well, you better call everyone right now, because I knew what was gonna happen. It was because we thought the Bay Bridge had collapsed on in the ocean. There was no TV at the time. So I was going down there and working. I slept on the couch for those 2 days. We had that little couch by the front door. I've never been busier. That first night, we were open till like 4 a.m. All these people coming in didn't even work for me, bussing tables, making coffee, doing this. It was, sitting on the floor, because we were like, I remember going out in El Camino, and you could look down both sides and see pitch black. Not one light, except for our store. I'm like, going, holy crap, and it's because we were hooked up to the same power thing as the fire station on the thing. So every emergency, we always have power. Every time Redwood City goes down, my people call me, no, I know we have power. You always have it. So yeah, that was just, what a great thing with the community. It was probably the fire department, people coming in, I'd go, the tags were this thick. I was rolling skins downstairs constantly. It was like 12 o'clock, and we're telling people it'd be 2 hours. That's fine. Where are they gonna go? What are they gonna do? So it's just 3 days, all the community, the whole bit. It was really like, everyone helping out the whole bit. So that was a really cool thing. And then just all the different experiences. 49ers always come in. Barry Bonds, during the day that Barry Bonds played for the Giants, we have the back banquet room. So every night he'd play at the stick, he'd come home to Menlo Park, and we would let him sit back there because it was private. So Barry would sit in the back room every week, every Wednesday or whatever. He'd be in the back room. Nobody would ask him for his autograph or whatever, but he knew that he had his private space back there, because it was all cool. That, and just some of the great, even recently with COVID, we were an essential business. I mean, to think, I know my dad was looking down, I told you so, but we never closed a day. I never closed a day during COVID. My crew never got a day off. I mean, unbelievable not to have an outbreak during that whole time. I really, what I owe to that, my crew and the whole bit, and during that whole period of time, but we're really proud about that too. We felt like we were doing everyone a service, a whole bit. So, I think that's about it. I like to say that it does coincide with me selling my business right now. I know some of you have probably heard that a whole bit, but after 40 years, yes, I have tendonitis in my arms now. I have to do something else, and I've done my time, but my gift was not developing my property. I gave him a 20-year lease, so I'm gonna be 90 before that goes away. It's not gonna be me that's gonna tear down that sign. So I'm really happy the fact that we were able to be in a position to keep the place the way it is and have it continue on for the next 20 years. And it's actually great when your own children are the one telling you not to tear it down, not to change it, not to obit. So that was really, because all my kids worked the pizza business just like me. all 4 years, the whole bit. And they all tell me they know the best thing you ever did for us was making us work at the pizza place. So, yeah, it's really, really important.
So you gave a lot of the development, but how did the pizza itself change? You know, the ovens, the formula. You said a statement, rolling skins.
I'll tell you the biggest difference. So I rolled skins for 10 years, so we call them skins. So we have a rolling machine that is a double roller. Actually, you'll see my dad in the photos, and we have the original photos. We still have the same roller, which is 2 rolling pins that are metal. So we have a sheeter. Other ones are called different. We've used sheeters since day one. So I was down there for 10 years with no fan or anything in that closet room. And I'd come up going, hey, I'm coughing out, flour. Flour's coming out, shut up. And you're fine. And I'm like, okay, those are the good old days. It's like, but we would sheet the skins. We still do it the same way. Everyone does rondo now the whole bit. If you ask what round table's disadvantages and why we're so expensive, we got a roller down there every day for 8 hours. Okay? Do I think it makes a difference? Yeah, I do. Do I think people care about it as much as they used to? No, because they're more price centric nowadays. But we still use a dough sheeter, so you cut the skins out the whole bit. Yeah, they have to rise. We mix our dough the day before, so the dough is still mixed. The day before it has to rise, then you use scrap. We still use the 6 number 10 cans for the paste. I can remember getting a box of Wisconsin cheddar because in the old days, we had to grind the own cheese, like in the 80s and the whole bit. I would have to do 30 tubs. Yeah. I could crush cans. I could open things. Oh my God, I got this grip. I'm like, well, yeah. But we would get real Wisconsin blocks of cheddar, and you'd have to get on the table with this knife and cut these long sections. No safety or anything. I'm like, hey, let's get up there. And, but it was the real stuff because we had to grind mozzarella, provolone, and cheddar. It was the 3 cheese mix. And then I tell you what the biggest difference is in the product today, and I tell you if we had it now, I think we would be the #1 pizza place in the world, is the fact that we had to get rid of cornmeal. The cornmeal was everything. I mean, to this day, I take skins from my store and I go home and I put my stone on my barbecue, and you don't have to have a pizza oven, and I put the cornmeal on it, I put my skin on it, and it cooks it perfectly. But I have people, we do parties and the whole bit, and I cook mediums, and I have people going, my God, this is what, yeah, because the cornmeal really changed. It would soak up the grease a little bit. It would just give it that crunchy taste, different or whatever. But once we had to go to volume, because all the ovens were deck ovens, and they were all called what? Montagues. Why? Because the story on the back of the menu all told you, we all read this every single time, it tells you how the whole story about Sir Lancelot and the whole bit, that it tells you how the ovens were done by Montague the Dragon. So my dad had all the ovens named Montague. So, and I still have one of those ovens in storage and all that, but so you had this deck oven, and I'll never forget being on University Avenue on Friday night, and that was the #1 store in the chain. When my dad fired me when I was 17, so I worked over there for, which I deserved, but I worked at University Avenue for 3 years and made it the #1 sales, #1 round table in the whole system. The parties upstairs a little bit, but you would have this deck oven, you would have 2 decks. Friday night, I'll never forget being in that kitchen. You get the pizzas on the board, you'd have to slide them on, and then you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all going, and I can still have my scars from my arms, because if you had a choice between dropping the pizza or burning your arm, you burned your arm. You know what I mean? You were like, and so all night, I had no hairs on my arms. I'm like, what do you do? It's like pizza oven, but you really had to, because you had to rotate. It was front, back, right, this, that, and then you had to bring it out. So you had to rotate that in that oven every Friday night. We were doing, there was one thing about my dad is he was my best friend, he was my best man at my wedding, the whole bit. He was my partner. but he was also my competitor. I would always call my dad, and I always wanted to be a pizza man. I was always, hey, we did this on Friday night. He's, oh, that's great. But in 1971, with our numbers, we were doing blah, blah, blah. I was like, God, nothing. But he was just that way. He was just that guy that he always wanted to do something different. And even when I look on his ideas in the end, he builds a garden room. That garden room was built in 1980, the one in Round Table, and puts a waterfall and then retractable roofs back there. Nobody does that stuff, but he wanted a spiritual place where you could get away from the restaurant and relax. He was all into that, like the woods and spirituality, and he really got that way in the end. But he looked at round tables and thought, they should be satellite stores. And I look at his stuff now and his ideas and the whole bit, man, they are incorporated today, but you realize that people like that have a mind like that go 1,000 miles per hour, they're creators, they're innovators, so they just need a little spark,
Why'd you have to get rid of the cornmeal?
Because the ovens went to conveyor. I would never do those 500 larges for that Super Bowl thing. I'd still be cooking them today.
So if it wasn't a conveyor, you could still use it.
You can that conveyor oven. When I did the 50th anniversary, which I was the only round table in the chain that sold pizza at the 1959 price. I don't know if anyone came to that. It was total insanity. I'll never forget that night because we advertised it and we knew a lot of the round tables weren't doing this, but I did my own t-shirt. I always was kind of a maverick, and I always fought corporate because my dad fought corporate his whole life and actually was in lawsuits with the corporate forever, so I was just taking his place. But I always wanted to have, 50 years was big for me. It was huge. So I thought, yeah, let's sell large pepperoni or, for $2.26. And that's what we did.
Wow.
I had the CEO from Round Table come in off Marsh Road, and they came in, I'll never forget, it was about 11:30 when the line started, and he goes, Bob, we just got off Marsh Road. And I go, yeah, and he goes, there is a line, and the right side of the of cars all the way. And I was like, we did $28,000 in one day. At 11:30 at night, my manager finally called me because we had to get cheese and everything from every round table around us to keep going. And I got 11:30. I said, tell people, sorry, that's it. That was just, it was, and then my crew almost went in shock because we had all the tags, 1,000 tags, and I go, wait a minute, everyone's ordering large pepperoni or large cheese. I took all the tags and threw them in the garbage. My crew was like, oh my God. And I go, guys, it doesn't matter who is in line. They're all here for one pizza. So I realized, if you do one thing, you just sell pepperoni or cheese, you can do 30 grand in a day, But when I did that, I'm like, no, guys, it doesn't matter if it's Joe or Mary or whatever. Next pizza up, it's yours. You know what I mean? So, yeah, that was a really cool thing just to give back and to be able to do that many sales at both my stores. Just wanting to give back, for all the years because, I have friends that post on Our Town in Palo Alto all the time. I was raised in Palo Alto a bit, but just this morning, I saw that they posted the glass pitchers from Round Table, and I'm like, I don't know why they're doing this. But they're posting all this stuff, and I just happen to have one and an ashtray, because that was one of my jobs in the mornings was putting all the ashtrays out, and the whole bit. It's just, you just go back to that time and the whole bit and serving all those people. It was, I feel like it was a privilege. It was, I don't own that place anymore. Other people own it. I've had people come in and tell me about, how they met their wife there or their first date there or whatever. I had one guy call me, blew my mind. I had a guy recently call me and tell me the story about my dad, but then was shocked that he got a Larson. But I had a guy call me from Oregon, and he goes, hey, Bob, I want to talk to a Larson. I was talking to him, he goes, my name's Richard. He was passing away. He was on his deathbed. He was in hospice, and he goes, but he was trying to get a hold of my dad. And I was like, and he goes, well, I wanted to thank your dad. And I go, for what? And he goes, we came in there in 1969 or whatever it was. it was a really bad time. We were coming back from Nam, nobody, it was really a negative time or whatever. So we were sitting in the restaurant, it was packed in the park, and your dad found out we had just gotten discharged from a bit and said, hey, and announced to the whole restaurant that, these guys just got out, bought their meal from the whole bit. This guy calls me after all those years. How blows my mind. I mean, to think that, those people were of character the whole bit, greatest generation ever, obviously. It really, I don't think my dad realized the impact, or my mom, until he passed away, because he got thousands of letters, that people were like, hey, your roundtable helped me put my kids through college. There's that, because I actually paid more than franchisees. My dad made handshake deals all over the place. Bob Reeves in Redwood City, Showbers in Fremont, handshake deal. You have Fremont, you pay 2%. I was like, I'm paying 3%, but it didn't matter. But that's how you did it back then. It was to think that he built the first roundtable in '59, he franchised in '62, which was the first roundtable, the one in Los Altos. To think that he was able to franchise after building one store as your concept, just was word of mouth and the whole bit. And then people would taste the product. That's usually how it is that people will taste the product, and that's why they wanted to even get into our business. People that have bought roundtables or stores usually tell us the reason why I wanted to buy this store is because I'm a fan of roundtable and the whole bit. So, yeah.
So my friend insists that the Menlo Park store's tomato sauce is better than the other roundtable tomato sauces, and he said that it's possible that you're doing your own tomato sauce instead of
Well, I'll tell you the difference, okay? Corporate's not listening. They use a Vol pack. Do you know what that is? So it's a box that has so what they did is take it out of the cans and they put it in the Vol pack, okay? I don't think it's the same. So I use the 6 number 10 cans. Mm-hmm. So I get cease and desist on me all the time. I'm like, go ahead, make my day. No, I do think it makes a difference because you have the exact spice mix, and I gotta bring in the book, it's in here, but I have the original recipe. And that's another thing is, my dad was a guy that would soak up bacon grease and bread and go, hey, check this out. You put a little flour in there, and I'm like, oh my God, but my dad was that way. My grandmother making sugar butter sandwiches, because I don't realize during the Depression, you didn't have meat. Right. But that was good enough for her. So I come home all freaking, I had 2 Wonder Bread butter sandwiches, my dad, I'm looking at all that going, how did you come up? But that's how it is. They would mix the dough until they felt it was right, or mix the sauce until they felt, no, this is right. Because if you ask me, the toppings are pretty much universal nowadays. I mean, everyone basically has the same toppings, even though I think it's so different. Because in the old days, we cut our own pepperoni, our own salami, our own ham. We did it ourselves. We had, and I always put my finger in there for the one slice of pepperoni and slice the top of it off. Every time we're like, why? For one onion, but we always did that. I was at Stanford every week going, yep, where's the top? I don't know, but we'd be down there because, I don't know, we just always hang up in the slicer and they tell us not to, but we would slice the pepperoni upstairs because we'd have time during lunch. So Menlo Park, you would work lunch and you would do dishes downstairs, no dishwashers or whatever, but all the pepperoni, you'd put in the cylinder, you'd slice that pepperoni, you would slice that ham. I mean, everything back then was fresh. We got our meat from Hooker Cole, from the butcher. Hooker Cole was a long-time meat guy in San Francisco and the whole bit, and we got our meat from the butcher. It's all when it started going processed, and that's the direction, the whole business, because it saved what? Time and labor, and cost, a little bit, but it definitely made a difference. The pepperoni today, it doesn't curl up like it did back then and burn on the edge and then fill with little bees. That was the best. Okay? I mean, so I look at the day and going, why doesn't it do that? Okay, so a lot of changes, but it, because of just time and how people want it. But I still think chain-wise, we do a very good job. But I do think the sauce, the dough makes a big difference. the fact that we are so stringent on just doing it the right way. Having you scrap the night before and the whole bit. I get other Round Table Pizza. I know when they're not doing it right, and I call them up. I'm like, you can't lie to me. You can't, try to BS me, because I know what it should taste like, and I know what the texture should be like, and the whole bit. So, yeah, but that's the problem when you have a chain. Quality control.
I have two questions. First of all, how many round tables are in the United States and how are they distributed throughout various states?
There's about 440 right now. We used to have 5. There's one thing my dad was proud of. When he sold the chain in 1976, he had 225 stores and never closed a location. Sued corporate for years.
But are they in every state?
They were in Oregon, Boise, and the whole bit. But now we're re-expanding because we're owned by Fat Brands now. So that's another thing, is that we're just another business under a massive brand now. And that's what's happening nowadays, is that we're being bought up, and so it's really different. It's not the same business anymore. You call up our corporate headquarters, and they're like, well, who are you? Round Pizza, whatever. We were a privately held company. So.
But are you in every state?
No, we're only basically West Coast based. We're up in Oregon. We're Washington State, but basically only California, West Coast, Hawaii.
And the other question I have is, if I'm not mistaken, there was a large wooden round table at the front of the restaurant.
Yeah,
What happened to it and why?
it's there right now.
Oh, it is.
You know what I did? This is the greatest story. I had 2 of those left. So if you go to my round table, I have one of the red original round tables with that polyurethane on it, and I have the red square tables that polyurethane on it. So I have 2 of the originals from the store. I took those into the barn door, which the barn door guys are the same guys that built the tables with my grandfather. So to bring it to them to restore it, what an awesome thing. So if you go into my store, right there on the left, you'll see that original round table, and it still has that polyurethane on it, because we all love that smooth polyurethane that they put on the tables and the whole bit. So yeah, I have one of the original ones in the picnic tables that we had back then. I have the original redwood round back then that you can't get anymore. I see them on eBay all the time. I see round table dragons on eBay. I see round table matches on eBay, the whole bit. So ashtrays, but yeah, I get calls all the time. Bob, do you want to buy this? I'm like, no, not money.
They probably stole it from you, huh?
Huh?
They probably stole it from you, huh?
No, you know what? From all the stores, because round table to me should still have that mosaic in every store.
Oh, yeah.
That's custom, the whole bit, but they've moved away from that now. If you know anything, the 3 shields, so we have the 3 shields in the sign. Nobody knows this, but it spells F-U-N. So those 3 shields were like subliminal advertising, how, so not those, but if you see our sign, the 3 shields on the modern menu, that's what it spelled, was F-U-N. My kids were growing up, they just had to see the shields. They just were like, round table. I was like, no, that's not mine. But that's all they had to do, is see those shields and the whole bit. And if you go into my store, when my dad built that, we still had A&W root beer across the street, which I still think should be A&W root beer. There'd be a line down the block. But no, when that was being built, and my dad built that thing custom. It's all cinder block. It's got all those beautiful high beam ceilings, the slate roof. It's got the custom stained glass that he had done inside. If you look up in the ceiling, they're custom stained glass with the 3 shields in it. So yeah, that was his castle. He wanted to build a castle there, and it is. Can't really do much bit. You hit the cinder block, people are like, oh, that takes my skin off. I'm like, it's cinder block. Okay, there's not much to do with that. He wanted to build a castle.
So, is the picture down here, is that the original round table pizza?
Yeah, this one right here, and there's a couple others. If you guys when you come up before you leave, you can see it in the book. But it was the old Waterworks building. And yeah, for my dad got the rent for $140 a month. He was always proud too. He had just opened and just did his hand painted sign, and he always joked about this too. But a health inspector came up before he opened, said, "Nope, got to put a fan in." So they had to take out the R and put in a fan, and he goes, and that's what, if you go into the round table and see the artist rendition that's on the wall, it says pizza parlor. Because he goes, yeah, it was the first pizza parlor in the state of California, because they made him take out the R. You know, so just kind of little stuff like that. And yes, the door did, in the beginning, it was a solid oak door, and they didn't have a rolling table, so they took the door off the hinges, and they would use that as the rolling table. And then, you know, it wasn't health inspections back then, but you know, hey, people seemed to love it back then a whole bit. So you did what you had to do, you know, back then. So yeah, really, I think like a lot of guys that made their mark back then a whole bit, it was like an American dream, you know, having a dream to be in the pizza business or control your own destiny in the whole bit. So, and that's, I would, as soon as I could recognize the pizza business, I always wanted to be a pizza man my whole life. And to be able to sit there, and I tell my kids, you can't do that nowadays. You can't work one job. And I go, for me to work my whole life and to be able to retire as a pizza man, I mean, I can't say enough of that. So can't do that anymore.
I have one other question.
Yeah.
Did the Kingston Trio ever play?
Well, my dad was all about, so the banjo, I look at all the stuff, he had live entertainment. So if you look at some of the pictures, whatever, they have all this live entertainment. So that was the internet. My dad wanted to create a place, it wasn't about the medieval thing, he wanted to create a place where families came. He charged higher for beer. Even when he opened in the 60s, why? He wanted to discourage the drinking in the whole bit. He wanted families in the whole bit. And that's, we always adopted that. We always charged more for the alcohol because we weren't about that. You know, we were always about families, and that's what he was trying to get across the whole time.
Well, I had heard a rumor that they, I don't know if they got started, but the Kingston Trio played there.
I'm sure they did.
As well as the Crackpot in Redwood City.
We had Stanford Band inside the University having a round table. I can't even tell you how many May Day parades that I participated in, that all Larson kids were then incorporated to hand out those red round table balloons. So we would, at May Day, all 6 of us would go and hand out those balloons. It was just the greatest thing to be able to, that May Day parade in Palo Alto was really a cool thing. And my dad was so, I remember graduating from, or going to school at Jordan Junior High, and my dad donated all the pizza for grad night and all bit for the whole school. So it's just stuff like that, you know. My dad was always about just, you know, whatever you contribute to the community contributes back to you. So he was always about that, you know.
We used to have all our soccer
Yeah.
parties there right after my kids played. Let me ask you about the story of turning down an offer to purchase. Is that the entire building that you
Well,
turned
I
down?
was offered a few years back before the pandemic. I had some really interested parties before 2019, before tax changes were going to happen. A lot of people were looking to acquire property, and I had a number of interested parties because my property does not just the round table. I own that office building in the back. So what I did was, in 2006, when the pizza business started really going down, I developed the office building, to cement the round table in front. I could have taken that whole lot and built one structure. But by doing the office building, it offset, you know, whatever losses we had with the pizza business, and we could keep it there forever. You know, so I kind of did that and made use of that back there, but it's one lot, and I did have an offer, you know, that was in the $20 million range, but I don't have a 1031 exchange. And to be honest with you, it was my kids who are the ones who are really, that don't ever sell the property, Dad. Once it's gone forever. So when your kids feel that way, I mean, that's all I needed to hear, is like, for my own kids that could obviously really profit off that or whatever, but you know, my kids were like, no, it was more important to keep it the way it was, and you know, they're proud of that fact and the whole bit. So yeah, like I said, it'll be there the next 20 years.
And do you still own the office part of it too?
Oh yeah, I own the whole lot, the whole bit. That's why I'm not going anywhere.
Oh.
So tell us what will happen after after 20 years, is there any chance that maybe your grandchildren will take it over? Or
No, it's his now. It's, you know, he has a 10 with 2 5-year options. I see this, he's got a very agreeable landlord. So, I mean, it's not like I have a vested interest that he does well. I know what he can pay. So, I mean, I had to charge him what I knew exactly what he could pay, because I know. So, I made it so and he doesn't want to make any changes. He realizes how important the store is the community. He wants to put some money in the store. I'll even say, yes, I'm an old school guy. My bathrooms are spotless. You can go, I put them on Google. You can have surgery in them. But I'm more like, you know, old school. I like people coming in and going, yeah, video games. I go, yeah. I can park a bus in my lot. I got a banquet room. I got 3,300 square feet. That doesn't exist anymore. If you look at all the concepts coming out nowadays, they're tiny because of the rent. I mean, we had Boardwalk close in Los Altos. That was our hangout. Okay, that place was busy every night of the week. And then he had to close down, and people were like, well, why doesn't he relocate? It doesn't exist anymore. Mm-hmm. That land of 30 parking spaces on El Camino in that area, no, it doesn't exist. So that's why all these places are going away. And I don't know, I never thought I would outlive the Goose. I mean, the Oasis. I never thought, you know, but Beltramo was the first. You know, I mean, you know, that place had 40 employees. I love that place a little bit. And what did we get instead? A Bevmo. Okay, so I'm just saying that, you know, you look at over time, and I felt like on the end, I not that this is the case, but I felt like I was the only one really caring as much as, you know what I mean? I just felt like people didn't care as much anymore. So I'm wrong, because when SFGate came out, there's like 6,000 comments on the article that came out, and my son has been going through that. He's like, Dad, you gotta go through these comments. Like, these are all the people that work for you for the last 40 years. I was like going, yeah. So you realize what kind of impact you've made, and that's another thing I'm most proud of, is just all my high school, all of that, you know, them coming back from college every year and having that loyalty to you. You were like a family back then, because we would do things together outside even of work and all, and it wasn't like it is nowadays. So yeah, it was just a very different time, you know.
So
Is
there a chance that after that second 10-year option, there'll be a third one?
Well, yeah, you never know. I mean, hey, listen, we own the property. So maybe if he decides that he wants to move on or something like that, that we always take it over. You know, to me, the location's irreplaceable. I argued with corporate that for a long time. They didn't seem to really care about the location. To me, it's everything. So, yeah, but no, and I bleed for the brand. I would love to be running the company. I'll be honest with you. My dad sold it in 1976. I understand why he did it, but I wish I was running the company now. I wish we were like In-N-Out Burger. I wish we were a privately held company that still believes in the same values and will not add onion rings or anything else, because it's not what they do. You know, so there's a lot to say to that. And look at them. You know, they are the queen of the business now. So, no, I bleed for the restaurant business. It's, if you're not about serving people, it's about people. It's about, you get this joy of serving people and them liking your product or whatever. I always tell my kids that the only people that can fire me are my customers. When they start coming in, that's it, it's over, you know? And so there's something empowering about that, you know, it motivates you. It really presses you to try to do the right thing. But am I gonna miss the people? You know, I come from a day that if we messed up on your pizza or whatever, I bought you a beer at the bar. I gave you half off, did this, but now you gotta shame me in front of the world, okay? It's like, you never wanna use me because I forgot your Italian dressing? Are you kidding me? I mean, I look at these people like they're insane. I'm like, okay, that's fine, you know, but I do, yeah. I mean, I forget your napkins. Oh, we'll never use you again. Okay. You know, so it's just so different and disassociated. You know, like I said, we mess up. I come from a place the customer's always right. You know what I mean? So we're always helping too. So that's the disheartening thing, is just people just want to trash you. And it's not like we're doing it on purpose. I'm dealing with people at the ages of, 16 and 25. It's not the most steady group, you know? So,
Thank you for your service.
oh, yeah.
So,
So all of this do-it-yourself, self-made, what was the decision, or can you talk about
I
sell to
think-
corporate?
I think the fact that I've been thinking about it for a while, and I'm a guy that wears my emotions on my sleeve. So it's more than selling a restaurant. It's part of myself. It's who I am. So it's something I thought about for a while, but I realized that, I took my kids to Italy a couple years ago, in Switzerland, just them, no friends, no nothing. And we figured it's the last time, before they get older. And, I to be in these places that I've never been, okay? I've been working my whole life. I've taken maybe 2 weeks off for my honeymoon, okay? Because the restaurant business is a different type of business. It's not something that we moved from. So I realized, that it took me till I was 62 to get to these places, to get to Italy or whatever. And my dad never made it there. And so I tell my kids, I'm like, you gotta live life. And so I just think, for me, I just look at the next chapter of my life, and my grandbaby just got born. So I just can't even tell you, to be able to hold my grandbaby right now and hold it changed everything to me. And I want to spend time with her and my family. And it's just been, you can ask my kids every vacation, where's Dad? Just like my dad. I was in the room. I was on the phone. I was always, having to deal with something. So it's a really, you miss out a lot on a lot of things. I missed the Super Bowl. I mean, in my hometown. That'll never happen again at Stanford, the whole bit. So, but it was for the greater cause. Okay, I always look at it that way, because I knew my dad was so proud of me after that. I'll never forget that sale. It was like $6,000, and back then, 1987, that was a lot of money for pizza. We're like, oh my God, $6,000 for a pizza order. But yeah.
I think we have time for one more
Yeah.
question. Does anyone have a question?
I have a question. There were 3 pizza parlors in the 60s in proximity to each other, Magoo's, Village Host, and you guys. Was there any liaison between the 3 of you? Did you talk about
Oh
things?
yeah,
or-
I mean, I helped. My dad even did that. When my dad opened up Roundtable, before he did that, he was working at Hambones and opened up 3 other places. My friend's place, 23 Skidoos, and another one, and they weren't round tables. So he was working for all these pizza places, and then he, at that time, he was helping other places set up their pizza operations. He was basically a consultant doing that. And then, but then it dawned on him that, why don't I open up my own place? I am really fascinated with some of the legal stuff went back then. I'm not going to go over that, but the fact that my dad was, in court in 1962 because he sold Roundtable for $50,000, and then changed his mind. And then Arthur Crane wanted his money back. And then who was the lawyer? Pete McCloskey. I look at this stuff and I'm just like, all these guys, that were around back then. I called Pete, years ago. And I'm like, and he goes, oh yeah, your dad, that was a mess back then, the whole bit. But all those guys, Max Tea Room, all the places that were around back then. So they were all together, and I did the same thing. When Oasis opened up their pizza business, I helped them open. They're like, hey, 'cause I was hanging out there after work anyways. But because my dad, you could always, you could eat pizza in the store, but you could never drink in the store, unless it was after hours, of course. No, all of us, it was different. It was not like nowadays you think it's cutthroat or whatever. Everyone was kind of in it together. You know what I mean?
Well, thank you, Bob.
Very welcome. have 4 larges, and I know there's there's probably a slice for everyone, and I got 2 King Arthurs, a pepperoni, and a Guinevere's Garden Delight, and that's another thing. Some of the names that I just want to say here, and this is what I miss about the round table the most, is that we had, the round table combination. We had the King Arthur Supreme. The combination had, shrimp and anchovies. Sir Lancelot's Desire, sausage. Pride of Camelot, beef. Sir Galahad's Choice, salami. We sold a lot of salami pizzas back then. Nobody ordered salami anymore. Black Knight Special, olives. Guinevere's Pleasure. Archimedes' Delight was pepperoni, number 8, because we all had numbers back then. I still see numbers in my head. 9, Prince of Denmark. That was ham. 10, Morgan Le Fay's Revenge. That was anchovies. Number 12, Viking's Liking. Shrimp, tasty and tender. 13, Puff's Pleasure. Mushrooms. Friar Tuck's Fancy. Mushroom, shrimp, and olives. And then 15, Mervin's Marvel, which is a very popular pizza, and I always tell people to order it sometimes, is mushroom, olive, and sausage. It's actually a great combo. People don't think about that, but we used to sell a ton of it back then. So yeah, that and the names, and last thing I'll say is the memories of I'm going in with my friends, and then we go to Baskin. My parents, we lived in Palo Alto, so I'd go to the Baskin Robbins Round Table, then on University Avenue, then we go to Baskin Robbins, then we go to the Stanford Theater, second level, watch a double feature, Towering Inferno, or freaking, Poseidon Adventure, whatever, and then throw raisins from the top thing or whatever. Just a great time to grow up. Yeah, I was the kid, I didn't do that, so. But thank you so much, and help yourself to the pizza.